and the Band of Brothers, we were just showing some pictures from George H.W. Bush from high school. We forget how young. They were not men.
Yeah, boys.
They were boys. George H.W. Bush did not go from Yale to war.
18.
He went from Andover High School, Andover Phillips Academy. That's who the guy was when he went off to strap himself into a plane and
Oh my God.
and fight the war. Let's bring in right now the host of MSNBC's Hardball, Chris Matthews. You know, Chris, I've been somewhat amused, somewhat disappointed by some conservative commentators, some good conservative friends of mine who've said, oh, all these people saying nice things about George H.W. Bush. They hated him when he was president of the United States. It seems not only to miss the point, but in part make the point about the graciousness of George H.W. Bush. He knew Maureen Dowd was gunning for him. He knew the New York Times was gunning for him. And yet he showed the extraordinary grace of saying to Maureen in that lovely note, basically, you drive me crazy. I'm going to swear. I'm going to be profane. I'm going to be angry. But if you ever need me, know that I will be here and I will not let you down. It reminds me so much of what you wrote about at the beginning of your Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan book, where O'Neill's son said the only thing my dad hated more than Reagan's governing philosophy was not getting work done for the American people. That's this generation and what they understood.
Well, those of us who knew George Herbert Walker Bush knew that he knew us before we were tough on him. When he asked us to be nice, my dad said be nice to him. He said to me, George, as a senior, said be nice to my son. It's all part of it. There's a tension in politics at its best. As you know, you were in it. There's a tension between one side and the other. That's how it works. It's the whole dynamic of democracy. You argue. You get mad. And you fight over issues. And that's how it works. And that's better than dictatorship, isn't it? And I think that George Herbert Walker Bush, we call him because we got to distinguish him all the time from W. You know, I was just thinking about that generation, what you were saying a moment ago about what Tom Brokaw christened the greatest generation so well. My dad's best friend, Eugene Shields, they played golf every Saturday. We knew him our whole lives. And he never, ever told us what he did in World War II. He was the guy that piloted, he was called a coxswain. He brought those Higgins boats into Normandy. Personally, he was the one that drove them in as one of the guys on the boat. And every time there was a landing in World War II, he was there in the landing. And he never, ever told us. And we found it like a couple of years before he died. And I just tell you, that is so much like those guys. They don't brag. And I think that's Bob Dole. And when I saw him stand up the other day, I said, you know, Bob, you've been through it, not just in the war, but all those years when you were handicapped, just like John McCain was, all those years putting up with your handicap and putting up with the attacks from George Herbert Walker Bush, that you were a straddler, that you didn't have the guts to stand up on issues. And yet here he was yesterday in the Capitol of the United States, standing on his feet, saluting this guy he'd been at war with politically. It's the real thing, and I love it. I love the real thing.
That's and again, Willie, that's who we have been as a country. Adams and Jefferson fought perhaps the ugliest political campaign in American history in 1800, and they became dear friends. And both of them died the morning on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And John Adams' last words were, "At least Jefferson lives."
Yeah, and I think that's probably how Bob Dole felt yesterday as he stood in front of that casket, Mike. I mean, the things the two of them have seen and lived through are things that I think many people today, particularly young people, don't fully understand. They're lines in a history book or something they read on a Wikipedia page, but the lives they lived.
Well, that's why I think, Chris, I don't know whether you agree with me or not, I suspect you might. This is an American moment that we should really cling to. This is not a tweet. It's not a text message. It's something to cling to watch and remember, because this is a passing moment that I don't know occurs again in our future.
And I agree, and I think When movie stars die, they bring out the old pictures. Elizabeth Taylor dies in later life, and they bring out the pictures when she was 19 and she was a place in the sun. We bring our politics back to us from the past. But every moment like this is in the present. What's really going on right now is a national reaction to Trump. No matter what we say or don't say, it's a reaction to what we have. And we miss the better. We miss that part of decency and honor that's missing right now in our dialogue, in the way we talk about each other, in the media. And I think that we want to go back to some of that. I know we do. We want some of that grandeur back again.
Yeah, and George H.W. Bush, Chris, just really quickly in our final seconds, a lot of people talked about how these men never bragged about their service and their sacrifice. It's also coupled, though, with empathy that comes with losing a brother in war, that comes with their loss of their daughter,
yes,
that they carried with them as a couple, George H.W. and Barbara. And that empathy you can see in every relationship he has, politically and personally.
Yeah, right. And I think people can tell the real thing, the genuine article. Joe, you and I use that term, genuine article, for politicians, and that are the real thing. And there are liberals that are the real thing. I suppose there's phony conservatives. I've known some phony liberals who intellectually they like mankind, but nobody in particular. And then there are people like I've worked with, and you have, who actually do care about other people individually when they meet them. Regular people, they care about them. And that's why they're there. They're called leaders. And I think George Herbert Walker Bush, as patrician as he was, I've experienced it firsthand. He had an amazing ability to focus on people of much lesser station than he was in life. And that was a gift for all of us.
The people's
Chris Matthews.
patrician.
Chris, thank you so much. We'll see you on Hardball tonight. Thank you so much. We have much more ahead on Morning Joe. We're back in just 1 minute.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.